All right. Well, today we're going to make barbecue chicken great again. And when you think about barbecues, of course, people always think two things. Oh, the it's about the sauce, and you have to do it on an open flame out where you got your beer and people are at the park, or it's got to be an outside thing to make truly great barbecue with that smoky flavor and all that other nonsense. And that's exactly what it is. It's nonsense. I haven't used an open flame for barbecue for years. And part of the reason is when you have other things going on in your household, you can't stand outside married to your meat for an hour and a half, 2 hours to make sure that you don't burn it and that it's cooking properly. So I guess if you have nothing better to do than stand outside, then that's great. More power to you. Do it on open flame. But for most of us, we just don't have time to do that. And, that's not fair to her if I'm standing outside over a barbecue pit for 2 hours and I leave her inside with the chaos of the household. So I have things to do, and standing outside is not one of them. And today, for example, it's in the 30s, and it's foggy, and it's getting dark. As you can see outside the window. See, it's kind of foggy out, and we're getting at dusk, and of course it's Michigan in January, so it's not exactly warm, so this would be not a very good day to be standing outside over an open flame. But it's a wonderful day to have barbecue. And chicken is great to barbecue inside the oven. It's not so good on an open flame because it's very hard to cook, and if you undercook it, of course, you get sick. But it's perfect in the oven. So that's what we're going to make today, is we're going to make our barbecue, and I do barbecue chicken. See, here's my chicks right here. Those are skinless, boneless thighs. And the thing about cooking barbecue chicken is this is one of those where the dark meat is a little juicier and has a little bit more flavor than the white meat does. So it actually barbecues better when you cook it this way. And with this, we're going to have a vegetable. And of course, as always, we're going to use our frozen vegetables. So it's going to be corn today because corn goes well with the barbecue. After all, that is what they had at the first Thanksgiving, was corn and squash and poultry. So we're going to kind of modify that to corn and potatoes.
I just knew the Indians were out there barbecuing.
And our poultry instead of turkey, of course, is going to be chicken. So it's going to be similar to those Thanksgiving feasts that they had up in New England, but we're going to use the advantages of modern technology, like our oven. So I preheated my oven, because I'm cooking tonight, to 425. You're cooking chicken, you're going to want to go over 400. If you go any lower than that, you're not going to get it cooked properly. I like to go 425. I may even kick it up to 450. But these are kind of smaller pieces, and since they're boneless, you don't want to cook it too high. Now, if it's got the bone in it, you want to kick it up because you want to make sure that you get all those blood vessels that are attached to the bone well cooked, so you don't have any blood on your meat. So if you got the bone in, you want to kick this up probably to 450, 475 because you got the bone in, and you want to make sure that it really, really cooks thoroughly. But we got boneless, skinless, so we don't want to overcook it because then it's going to turn out real dry, and we want to make sure it's tender. So I'm going at like a 425. Here, I also throw in baked potatoes. See, there's my baked potatoes there. And when I cook them in the oven, I like to wrap them. I wrap them in my aluminum foil because that makes those skins nice and tender. And of course, we know that the skins are where most of the nutrients in potatoes are at. So if you don't wrap them, those skins get real tough and they become basically inedible. And then you're just eating what's inside the potato, the meat. But I like the skins. So I like to keep my skins tender, so I wrap the skins. So what I'm going to do here, we're going to do this in a couple parts tonight because I don't have enough time to have it running the whole time it's cooking. First thing I do is I put my potatoes in because I know they're going to take an hour to cook. Give yourself about an hour on your potatoes. You don't want to undercook them because they just don't taste very good when they're undercooked. So to get them nice and tender and soft, you're going to want about an hour. So I'm going to put these in first. I always put my potatoes in first while I'm prepping my chicken or whatever meat I'm cooking. Usually it's either chicken or pork are my two barbecue meats of choice. A lot of people cook beef. Beef I just don't think is conducive very well to barbecuing. It gets too tough and too dry. So here I'm putting in and I already preheated my oven. So make sure you preheat, as we talked about on our tips on the what was that, the box pasta, when we were preheating about cooking the bread on one of our previous Make Food Great Again episodes. Make sure you preheat it, because that'll give you a much more even cook. If you just slam them potatoes in there without preheating it, they're not going to cook right. If you're in a real pinch, you cook them in the microwave. Of course, you can't use the aluminum foil if you do that, because you'll blow up your microwave and burn down your house. That's a whole different process. That's for a future video, is cooking baked potatoes in the microwave. I prefer to cook them in the oven if at all possible, because I think they just taste better that way. So we got our potatoes in there. And see, I got my little light on, so you can see there's my little potatoes in there. They're cooking away. And next we're going to address our meat. And one of the issues when you cook a meat and you bake it and you try and barbecue in the oven is the meat itself will sit in its own grease. And especially with chicken, it makes it like limp and kind of slimy when you do that. And it also makes cleanup a little more difficult. Now, somewhere along the lines, I got this really interesting pan. This is really heavy here. And let me show you this, because this is kind of interesting. So it's got these grooves. See little grooves coming through there? So it's got these grooves for your drippings. And, of course, they collect down here on your drippings. And so what that does is that kind of gets that grease out of there a little bit, so it's not sitting directly on the grease. I could cook this directly on the pan, but I like to use a rack. So you see I've added this rack in here on top of it, so that the meat really is not even touching the bottom, and then that kind of gives you it's just like cooking it out on an open pit. Because what's an open pit? You got a rack, and then all your drippings drip below. So it's very similar to that. So that keeps like all your grease and stuff from making your poultry too slimy, because we just don't want slimy poultry. And again, with chicken, it's real important that you don't want like blood or anything on it, because you'll get sick on it. So we want to make sure these are good. So we've set them out on a slow defrost all day. First they were in the refrigerator defrosting, and then the last couple hours we've had them out on the counter to kind of like do that. And slow defrost is always better than a quick defrost. It's a more thorough